Thanks so much, Anna. So my name's Professor Michael Anderson. I'm co-director with Robin Ewing of the Create Centre. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Aboriginal land. I'm on Gadigal land today, I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. If you'd like to acknowledge the land you're on, please feel free to do so in the chat. Look, it's my very great pleasure to introduce Richard to you in a moment. But before I do, I wanted to say to you that this is an event brought to you by the Create Centre. Many of you know what the Create Centre is. If you don't and you'd like to find out, please go to the link that Anna's going to drop in the chat. And thanks, Anna, again for doing such great work getting this together. And if you've got friends who you think, oh, I wish so-and-so had seen this webinar, it doesn't matter because it will be recorded for that friend that needs to hear it and see it, and it'll go up on our YouTube, along with the 50 or so other presentations that we've had over the years in the Create Centre, which is becoming quite a library of resources for people to really get a good sense of the arts and creativity and its application in the real world. But anyway, enough for the plugs and the ads. I'm not going to do a long introduction to Richard because that just takes time for him. And of course, you can look him up on LinkedIn and look him up on several places on the web. But just as a background, as many of you know, Richard's a dedicated educator and advocate for youth entrepreneurship and the development of students' future skills. He has worked as a teacher in several contexts, and his work in design, I think, is well known to many of us. So without any further ado, Richard, the floor's yours, and really looking forward for what you've got to share with us this evening.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for giving up a little bit of your Thursday night. Really appreciate that. Also, a big thank you to Anna for helping me get to this place. I think we started this conversation back in March last year, and I wasn't able to get to find a perfect time or an easy time at all. So thank you for keep nudging and supporting me to get here. So I've got a bit of an insight into my world and the work I do, but I really want to be able to get some thoughts and insights from you, make this as practical as possible. I hate being a passive participant, so I'm looking forward to getting some feedback and some ideas. And if you've got a pencil or piece of paper, a pen handy, that'll be great. And I think Anna, you might have put that in the email, but if not, anything's good to work with. But I'm going to be getting you and your brain working very soon. So let's get started. Thanks again, Michael, and thanks again, Anna, and the whole team at the Create Centre at USyd. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to explore some ideas and push some thinking around. So I would also like to acknowledge the country I'm on, and pay my respect to the traditional owners of the land in which I live, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here. It's on your ancestral land that nurtures me, a land that was taken from you. So to all of those First Nations, people who've cared for this country for the thousands of years, I'm deeply grateful for that stewardship and care of this beautiful land. And I'm also inspired to follow in your footsteps and learn from your wisdom. The fear of creativity. So I'm a high school teacher, been teaching design, technology, visual arts, digital technologies for over 25 years now, gosh, and taught in government schools, private schools, Catholic schools, predominantly in high schools. So that's years 7 to 12, talking 13 to 18-year-olds. And there's this real I suppose, goal of mine to help address some of the decline in creativity. I've got two young teenagers, and I'm a witness to their beautiful creativity that they were born with, and also how I suppose the education system and society really works against the use of that, be it in a whole range of discrete cultural constraints that gets put onto us as people, or through the mechanisms of education itself. And I'm sure we all know that, being in this creative kind of community that we're in, it's a real battle at times to be able to have and maintain young people's enthusiasm to choose these different kind of creative paths. So that's a little bit about my background. As Michael said, there's lots of information out there. So if need, contact me. Happy to have a chat and see how we can collaborate and build creativity. But what's really weird is that even though there's this decline and a resistance and even a fear of creativity, there's huge need for it in every industry around the planet. And I've been studying the need for that and capturing different organizations, when they advertise jobs and things, there's always this, one of the highest requirements for a candidate is to be showing off that creativity. But I'm not one to kind of lock creativity into just, pretty paintings and pictures like that. I'm a practicing artist myself, albeit, not a lot of output happening at the moment, but there's a real difference between, say, visual art and the process of being creative. And that's where I want to take you tonight, on a little bit of that journey in behind how I interpret it and how I bring it into the classroom. So setting the scene, some interactive stuff, three of my favorite Divergent thinking tools, a little bit of Q&A, and hopefully wrap up to get into dinner and some binge TV by around 7:20. But by all means, put your hand up, throw me a question, or save them for the end, whatever works. Let's start by, doing something a little bit odd and visualizing a window in the side of your head and opening that window. And if you can, let some of that air into, behind that skull, into the brain, and just let that kind of sensation, if you can, fill the room that is your mind with a little bit of fresh air. So if you can kind of breathe in some of that air through the window into your mind. And if that felt weird, give me a thumbs up. If not, we'll persevere and keep going with what happens next. So the fear of the unknown for me, it's something that I've been watching for quite some time. As a high school teacher, I see students make elective choices based on a whole range of things. And a lot of creative students take a step back from, their own natural creative pursuits into something more stable or known. And so I'm trying to understand what it is about the human nature that, if we've got such creativity and we're born with it, what stops us from taking these steps? What are some of the drivers against us that moves us into other career paths? And what can we do to kind of recalibrate that? And of course, we're working against huge change around the planet, economical, geopolitical, climate, all of these kind of things. And I guess the more uncertainty there is, the more we're going to retreat back into something that is familiar and comfortable to us. And so in a lot of ways, creativity or creative risk-taking becomes a real threat. All of the different students that I've worked with over the years will have that feeling of, oh, I'm not ready for that. And you've got to really work them through reliving what they've been born with, basically, to then become comfortable and confident and build that safe environment. So it's, a real kind of shock to me, who just grew up seeking every form of creativity that I could find, devoting as much of my waking day to being as creative as possible, to coming up to, these next generations who don't naturally feel that this world is supportive of that, and it's there's this risk to being creative. So really fascinated with that. And there's a whole bunch of obviously reasons around it, and sometimes us staying small is just a natural way to stay safe. So I don't blame young people for moving away from it, and I don't blame parents by not having their children encouraged to go down these paths. It's something that is quite the pandemic around the planet, and I'm feeling it more and more as this uncertainty creeps around. But at the same time, I'm really encouraged by all of the different organisations and the people that I meet who are working actively to bring people together and understand what creativity looks like in their world, and the benefits of collaboration. So that piece about collaboration, I think, is really important. And the more we spend time with one another and get away from being our own art making or our own processes, but really getting to hear other people's stories and getting to learn more about them, really allows us to see these opportunities and be more courageous with our creativity through that collaboration. It also, the older you get, and I've mapped this with high school students when they get into that they move from primary school to high school, what happens when they're in high school and what is the drivers away from this creativity. And it's often, again, something we learn to be non-creative people. There's a whole range of drivers that push students to move away from creative subjects, be it it's too subjective, the marks aren't reflective in the effort I put into it, compared to much more linear curriculum that says, right, this is the subject, this is the answer, you get it right, we'll give you a number or a letter, and away you go, you're going to feel good about yourself. So the drivers behind the decision making is really interesting. As my children go into high school and they're choosing their electives, that I'm right in the middle of this now, the point where they're making their subject selections based on how much risk they're willing to afford, based on what is the culture of the playground and who is feeling good about themselves and what parents are congratulating them, and all the way through to the newspapers when we publish our NAPLAN results and our HSC results. It all comes down to a number, and being creative doesn't really fit well with numbers. So there's this natural battle that's happening in the schools, and the older you stay in that education space, or the longer you stay in that education space, the greater the decline, which is really interesting. To my point earlier about these skills, I've been tracking them for a good 15 years now, and the big one that came out from the OECD about 2 months ago, it really reflected World Economic Forum's goals and what they're trying to do and what they're seeing. The OECD was putting Australia, I think, in the top 5 in terms of young people who are creative. But I'm very interested to see what their metrics are around the word creative, and are they, how do they gauge that? So I'm working my way through the 150 or so pages of that document, but not a lot of mention around divergent thinking, and that's where I'm going to get you guys going soon. But you can see the trends over the years. Back in 2015, World Economic Forum had creativity in the top 10, which was amazing. And then, it's quickly gone up to the top 5 and stayed in around there. But you'll see it across all of these industries, regardless of what employment that looks like during the day. These are the capabilities that people are looking for all around the planet. Lots of links there. Happy to share them later on. But I've pretty much stopped looking at them now, because it's simply, this is the way that that's going to divide us from the automation of work into interesting and impactful output versus the human robot, and that the constant, this is what you're going to do today, do your job, finish at 5, off you go. The world we're moving towards, especially with the advent of AI and how quickly that's taken away a lot of traditional jobs, what is left. And I'm really hopefully, optimistically thinking that it's going to be the human experience, and a lot to do with that is going to be the creativity piece. So that's my wish. Otherwise, things get a little bit bleak. But I'm interested in this language around what is creativity, and this is coming out of LinkedIn again. That was their summation of all of these jobs that were put up back in 2019, connecting the dots that are seemingly unrelated to generate original, useful solutions is an incredibly valuable skill in every employee, regardless of what that industry is. So that's what they were pitching it as, and I really like that one because it doesn't talk about so much the output. It's really that cognitive piece. But again, you know, what tools are out there to help us generate this creativity? Is there much of that happening in the high schools or primary schools? What are some of these fundamental cognitive tools that a student could walk out of the classroom at the end of a few years and go, yeah, these are my tools. This is what I can work with. This just came out, the analysis of the report is being trickle fed out to the world, and you can see creative thinking up there in the top right-hand corner. And then there's this decline of other skills not really needed: reading, writing, maths. So I'm not quite sure why that's been pushed away so much, but diagonally opposite to that is this, you know, curiosity, lifelong learning, creative thinking. Up in that top right-hand corner. Over on the top left, they're saying this is less essential now, but expected to rise. So anything above that middle axis there is in growth and will continue to grow. Everything below it is steadily declining. Okay, let's get a little bit more creative. And I really love this idea about the relationship between creativity and collaboration. And in a point, you can say it's a bit like the water molecules, or, you know, little water droplets. They've got that great cohesive force where they stick together, and then there's this adhesive force where they stick to surfaces. So I see creativity as something that's really, what's the word? Contagious in a very positive way. It's something where you bring that positivity into the world, and it sparks other people's curiosity and positivity. Those conversations, those actions, then grow creativity in others, and that energy kind of really flows around into those spaces that you're visiting. But for a lot of young people, you've really got to kind of sneak up on this opportunity to create and be a little bit of a risk taker. You're up against so many other forces that you've got to be able to show the commercial value of creativity, the educational value of being a little bit divergent, the benefit to an exam, all of these kind of things. You've got to really lay it out. It can't just be a matter of, hey, well done, you know, it's great, you're going to get a job being a creative person. You've got to deliver all of these kind of ticks so that they'll take a bit of a step forward, and they've got to become more comfortable and confident in these kind of risks. So, you know, this is what I've been really fascinated in over the last few years is how you can build your own neural network, or, you know, your own brain architecture to say to yourself, I'm in a safe place. I can take this creative risk, but at the same time, I can really start to play with my brain, and what I say to it can have neurological impacts. I can rewire it based on what I'm experiencing and what I'm saying and what I'm thinking and feeling. So that's just become absolutely fascinating. You know, the brain plasticity, where you get to drive some of these neurological connections, or build these neurological connections, and strengthen them and play with them and talk to them, and you're actually growing this hardware that runs everything else based on how you're thinking. So that the relationship between this esoterical kind of thought that translates into something tangible in your brain is just unbelievable. So I've been playing with that with my students and getting them to rewire their brain based on how they think about an exam or something. And, you know, it's just fascinating and hilarious when you see students walk around the school and there's a lot of them doing exams right now, and they'll, hey, sir, how you doing? And I'm like, great. I'm like, I'm off to have a hot chocolate right now. And I'll be looking at them going, oh, right, you're going to do an exam. And I'm thinking, that's so cool. You know, they've learned to rewire their brain, and they're saying it out aloud, and they're now feeling something completely different. They're going into an exam situation where they would have been previously pretty stressed, and now they're able to smell the hot chocolate and you know, walk across the sand or whatever it is that's important to them. So that's just been really cool to be able to hear and see that it's, you know, I'm not a neuroscientist by any means, but I'd love to be able to map that physically on the brain and look at, see what's lighting up and what's grown purely based on what we've said to it. So plenty more to talk about on that one, but this is where I want to take us tonight, is this divergent thinking. Because, you know, I'd love to be an employer one day and say, hey, okay, tell us about your top 3 creative thinking tools that you use. And, you know, that applicant would be looking at them going, oh, this is this one, this is this one, and this is a great one for this situation. I reckon that would be amazing. So that's one of my goals with in the education space, is to have the students walk out with a toolkit of divergent thinking tools. Because everything else about education these days is we're taught to converge really quickly, to come to one answer, to get to it as quickly as possible, and as to match whatever we were given, to regurgitate the information and get it as close to what was on the board in the textbook, to what I needed to write in the exam paper or how to answer it. Yet no one really teaches students how to be more creative, how to be more divergent. And this is what I just find so fascinating, that we've got predominantly most of the planet saying we need these skills in our young people, or everybody if you're going for a job. But can you walk into that interview and say, yep, these are my top 5? Hopefully tonight you might be able to take 1 or 2 with you, and have a bit of a play with them. There's also great, obviously, mental health things that happen in this space as well. How you become more of, you know, empowered through this, I suppose, control or access to this thinking, rather than just being pushed around by those thoughts and what's happening. So if you've got a paperclip, let's just jump into this. Part of the real great fun and joy of being divergent is the total opposite to converge. So divergent thinking is really geared towards coming up with as many ideas as possible, and in as short as time, without logic, without overthinking it. You've just got to purge and let that freedom go into extrapolating and getting ideas and getting them out as quick as possible, without any kind of consideration for reality or use or function or anything like that. So if there's anyone brave enough to have a go at you know, this little experiment, let me know. I only need 1 person, and I'm going to get you to think of as many uses for a paperclip as possible. So, all right, fantastic. All right, first contestant, here we go. Deborah, you've got 30 seconds to give me as many uses for a paperclip as possible.
No, come on, not as many. I gave you 1. Hang on.
Michael, over to you. You've got to beat 1.
You can make a metal puppet. You can create a thing to hold a very small ingot. You can make jewelry out of it. You can create glasses for a mouse. You can create a walking stick for a mouse. You can create skis for a mouse. You can, I'm stuck with the mouse. That's all I've got. I've just got mouse accoutrement.
3,
That's
2,
all I
1.
have.
Beautiful. All right, not bad. That was, that'll give you 6, I think, for 30 seconds. Cool. Anyone want to take down Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, please take me down. Go.
From the Create Center. Here we go. Come on. Anna, it's either over to you.
You can link them together to make jewelry.
Nice. It's true.
I'm always very bad at this kind of exercise because I'm more inclined to have to think through the details of how to make one single elaborate version work, which means a time trial is no good. But I'm curious about how you would react to that as a form of well, where that places in terms of creativity, that if you gave me all day, I could probably actually build you some working systems.
Yep, I love all of that rationale and that beautiful functional, considerations that you've put in there. Throw all that out. Let that go completely. It is simply rapid projection of fanciful ideas. So yeah, what was interesting when Michael was thinking about it, you could see him kind of rub his face and look around like that. So he was trying to bring in other stimuli to get to help generate.
Well, Georgia mentioned in the chat, she says, I need to hold one in my hand. And I think that's an interesting aspect too, that some people do need the material object in order to work with it.
Absolutely. And, we'll play with the senses in a second as well to see how we can stimulate more ideas.
And Penny's just put her hand up. I don't know if it's because she wants to have a go at seeing how many she can do or if she wants to weigh in.
No, I just wanted to add that I agree with Anna that the pressure on a timed exercise for me as an artist doesn't invite creativity. And so although we did do that exercise, I was a good friend of Ken Robinson's, and we played with other possibilities of doing it. But I think the other thing just to bring in is, I agree with you around divergent thinking, of course, but sometimes competition is also a kind of killer of creativity. So I think whose point was it, Georgia, around the kind of embodied understanding of, your brain isn't just in your head, that you're thinking through ideas, thinking through making and playing. And I would be very interested to riff off Michael's ideas, because then if you had a family of mice with different objects and etc. So no, thank you, Richard. Good to meet you. And thanks for inviting me, Michael. It's lovely to be here. I was invited half an hour before it opened.
Fabulous. No, well done. Yeah, great points. And I often find comparison is the enemy of creation, and definitely time constraints don't help at all. So it's one of these opportunities for students and people to go, okay, I'm just going to throw out stuff, and the quicker you throw it out, and the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. So a bit like warming up before a race or something. You want to be just doing some light stretches. You want to be then doing a bit of a sprint, and then you've got your actual serious stuff. It's also great when you hear other people saying it and giving out these examples. It elevates everybody else to take on some of these creative risks as well. So a group setting is fantastic. Sure, take out the timing, but the idea behind it would be to just flood the ideas out as quick as possible. And then just be mindful that, again, the more you practice it, the better, the quicker you become at it, and the freer you become with letting go from those kind of functional constraints. It's the total, again, it's all about coming back to the total opposite of something working, something being logical, to just letting go. So part of that creative process for me is mess making at the start. So this is for me, you just want to get out there and make a mess of your thinking in your brain, and just to have that movement and freedom. Okay, let me quickly go back into sharing, and we'll get back on track. So nice, thank you, Michael, for that, and everybody else for their ideas. Can that see? There we go. Divergent thinking tool. So this is some of my fun ones that I love to play with. But the three that I'm going to focus on here is this A to Z, me map, and these 5 senses. There's a whole bunch of others, but tonight, if you can, take 2 or 3 of these away, fantastic. First one's A to Z. If you've got a piece of paper, A3, A4, whatever's good. I'm going to show you this little one here. And for me, it's all about generating lots of ideas really quickly, but giving it a bit of a context. So imagine you're, a travel agent, and you've got to come up with a promotional idea, and you've got a week to do it, but it's got to be something quite unique, out of the box thinking. And your boss has said, yep, this, I love how creative you are, but by we need something quite unique, go for it. And you'll be sitting there going, okay, what am I going to do? How do I start? For me, this is a great little starter. So if you've got a pencil, piece of paper, you can have different headings. You can change these around, but I just thought, let's start with something pretty functional or normal, such as a travel agency, and they've got to do a promotional thing. The idea behind this one is, again, it's a bit like the paper clips. You just write down anything that comes to your mind with that letter. So if I'm in the left-hand column over there, interests, A, acrobatic, B, bananas, C, kittens, D, dentists, anything that you can think of, you just spew them out, get them on that page, and away you go. So if anyone's got a piece of paper, or if you just want to, I'll take you through not all of these, maybe just one or two more columns. If you get stuck on a word or a letter, move on, jump onto the next one. And what's also really nice is if you're working in a class, you get the students to call them out, and if a student's got a blank one, they can fill it in with somebody else's idea. If they hear something else, they can put that idea on top of it. If they've got a few ideas for different letters, great, go for it. So they quickly go through these columns, and you just fill them in with as much, slightly related to whatever that top heading is, but don't by any means critique it or think it's useful or useless. Here, we're just trying to get as many ideas and look to see how we can connect them using this tool to try and reteach our brain to take, be a little bit freer so that we can find things that we weren't really in control of, and allow that uncontrolled process in, rather than us having to contain and be the masters of what's happening here. So once the students get going, it's quite fun, and they really get to feel something again, or remember a feeling that they had when they were pre-education crush. Anyway, has anyone got a couple in here? I'll give you a few more, I'll give you 30 seconds to put some in. So if I'm doing travel agency, living things, B, don't know, beach, no, it's not really living. C, carrots, E, eggs, flowers, goats, horses, blah, blah, blah. Situations, anxiety, beach going, cliff climbing, diving, don't know, experience, maybe work experience, fidgeting, frightened, goat farming, don't know. Target markets, this is always fun. If you can think of a whole bunch of extra or different target markets that just go all the way down there. Astronauts, farmers, goat herders again. Don't know where the goat's coming from in my brain at the moment. LinkedIn members, blah, blah, blah. So what happens is then, if you've got, say, 3 or 4 of these columns, that's enough for now. And what I get my students to do then is highlight something quirky that came out of each column, or maybe 2 quirky, weird, wacky little things. So they get a pen and scribble around H and P, and then they do the same thing over in another column. They circle whatever it is, something wacky, 2 wacky things in that column, and 2 wacky things in situations, and 2 wacky things in either materials or target markets, again, whatever you've got in those columns. And then you try and link one column to another. So, imagine if I've got my F, my farmers, my interest, farming. I'm going to draw a line over to living things, dingoes. I'm then going to draw a line over to situations. A, I had anxious, so it might be anxious, dingo, farming, and target markets might be, I don't know, dentists. And so you go, oh my God, what have I got here? I've got anxious, dingo farming, dentists, and you just say to them straight away, did you have any chance of coming up with something as unique as this prior to this little task? And you do the same for the other, wacky options that you had down in the other letters. And I often get them to, try and get onto Google and find an image of a dingo farming anxious dentist, and they put that into Google, and they can start to build some of these imagery around a potential situation. But ultimately, they've used this tool and their brain is feeling freer. There's more energy, and there's the eyes are opened now, whether they can take that nervous dingo farming dentist into a marketable idea, not interested in it just yet. It's more, did you come up with something unique? Would have you been able to use it, do this before this tool? And the answer is usually yes, something unique. No, have not come across this functioning part of my brain before. So that's my little A to Z. Next one, me map. This is a cool one. If you do have a little piece of paper, again, flip over the other side, or just play along. What I'm going to get you to do now, this is really good for, I suppose, brand identity, developing, a persona, or understanding your own aesthetic. So what I need you to do is basically think of yourself as an animal. What's your favorite kind of animal? Who would you be as an animal? Those kind of questions. What are you as an animal? Whatever comes to mind. You can have one or two answers there if you're stuck in deciding. Again, a landscape. Who are you as a landscape? I don't want to preempt any ideas or whatnot, but first thing that comes to mind, favorite landscape, favorite place. Jot that one down for me. You've got season. What is your favorite time of the year? Whatever comes to mind, drop that one in. You've got time of day now, so try and be specific with this one. It could be whatever, but put the minutes in there as well, just not afternoon so much. Try and give me a down to the quarter of the hour at least. You've got shape. It's pretty easy, I think, but it's really fascinating when students start to understand the code behind shapes, and the meaning behind the unwritten symbolism of these things. So whatever shape you are. Era, so back to kind of the time sense. Is there an era that you align with? Musical instrument. What kind of musical instrument sound would you be? Someone, if you were that object. So a few seconds, if you've got a pen, paper, or if you can think of them or remember them. Because what happens next is I'll try and get them to write a little bit of a story about using one of these personas as a character in a story. And so if let's go with landscape, let's do something silly. The shoreline woke at 6:15 in the afternoon. 6:15, don't know why. So the shoreline, that's my landscape, 6:15 in the afternoon. And she heard the sound of, what is it, a harpsichord? What are those things that you squash and they make that funny little sound?
Accordion.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So I'm a seascape, shoreline, 6:15 in the afternoon. So I've done something wrong because I'm normally 5:15 in the morning, but I'm trying to trick my brain here. And I'm an accordion. There we go. And they can really build some beautiful kind of narratives and concepts around these three key bits that have just jumped out. They can have more if they want, but it's really fascinating to see them feel themselves in a new kind of space and place, to then code themselves through these imagery and points in time. So getting away from the physical representation of themselves into something much more diverse, and how they start to see space and place as part of who they are and their own identity. So that's me, Matt. Get some wackiest, beautiful kind of little poems or little stories from these things. And the last one is these 5 senses. And I'm really fascinated by how we can get away from the flood of information coming our way through sight. So I'm not going to focus on sight. That last one was pretty sight heavy. These 5 senses are great for developing a bit more about that brand, or a bit more about an experience, about a font, for example. Or it could be anything that you're playing with, but this one's just a lot of fun to be able to think of who you think of. Whether if you're doing, some typography, for example, what would that font taste like? What would the font sound like? So go through your 5 senses here, but really trying to stay close or away at least from the sight. What would a Times New Roman smell like? What would Capri feel like if you ran your hand over it? What sound would it make? Would it be alone at night? Is it friendly, or is it quite a recluse? So not just the 5 physical senses. Can you bring in a 6th sense into this experience and help develop a real deep or rich appreciation for something that's quite inanimate, or something that doesn't naturally have anything to do with the senses? Fascinating to have students play with this. I often get them to work in developing their own font, and they've got to be able to do all of these things. And we try and get the student to express and describe these senses of their font, and no one can see what it looks like. And then we actually put up a letter that they've created, and they're like, oh yeah, I can smell what you're thinking there. That's fantastic. And often the next part of that assignment would be they have to go out and make the actual font using these one of these kind of senses. So they've got to rebuild a letter using one of these senses, and it's just fascinating to see them kind of eyes and the head kind of tilt, and they just go off into this zone out for a few seconds. So that's the 5 senses. Great fun to play with, but it's also really cool in that as a participant in this world, I'm always trying to hack my own brain and try and get away from the sense of sight, because we're just flooded with so much of it. And so I will scrub my teeth at night and turn the lights out and try and put toothpaste onto my toothbrush, and try and scrub my teeth. And usually that fails horribly, but you become acutely aware of all of these other helpers that are happening to get the job done. And at the same time, there's really interesting things happening in around the world that you just weren't focused on or weren't conscious of. And I just love that ability now to go in and scrub my teeth with all the lights out and eyes closed and do a pretty good job. It's really hard sometimes trying to get the toothpaste warning on the actual toothbrush. If you can find a way to rig that one, that'll be great. Let me know, because you just don't know how much toothpaste is on your end of the toothbrush. So lots of things like that. But I'm just fascinated by opening up those other senses and seeing what you can do to corrupt that mainstream feed that comes in through sight. Okay, so that's the 3 there. What I'm also really interested in is this last little piece, and I'll finish up here because I'm interested to see how this sits with everybody, but a really wacky world of ontological design. So as a design teacher, I'm really mindful of the impacts we have on the environment and society with our designs, but also the impacts of our thinking about design and how we can empower ourselves to be designers and create solutions to the problems around us. But at the same time, what has our history done to our thinking? How does our past experiences and lived day-to-day lives determining how we see the world and also how we think? So it's a bit like that brain plasticity. The objects that are around us are actually having a neurological impact on our brains, and are constricting our thinking or expanding our thinking depending on what space we live in and what areas we visit. And so again, it's this another world that's impacting on our thinking without us really knowing about it. And what's crazy is this impact that we have created is coming back to have an effect back on us. So there's this really strange relationship between what we put out there is changing the way we put things back out into the world. So how do we unpack that, or how do we uncouple those two things, or how do we drive it so that does have positive, results that our next generation can start to play with and grow in. So this built environment's really interesting, and how it affects the physical structures in our brain, which then go on to affect the way we think, and therefore the way we create and design. And what did we do previously that was a benefit, or what have we done previously that is stopping our thinking from growing into new places? So great videos out there. If you type in ontological design, this guy's amazing. I'm not going to play it, but well worth a good look. It comes from these theories, in particular from Anne-Marie Willis. So check her work out. But the idea is that designing is fundamentally to being human. And she says, we design, that is to say, we deliberately plan and scheme in ways which prefigure our actions and makings. However, in turn, we are designed by our designing and by that which we have designed, i.e. through the interactions of our structural and material specifics in our environment, that this adds up to a double movement. So we design our world whilst our world acts back at us and designs us. So fascinating kind of feed-in loop there. But if you can think back, where you sat today and what you did today, how did that affect your thinking? How does that affect the design that you create? How does the room you live in throughout your day shaping your thinking? So I'm fascinated by that, especially, if you think of schools that are predominantly boxes, and we spend a good 6 hours putting young brains into this box, and then we tell them to try and think outside this box. Like, what have we created here? The irony around the symbolism of that expression, and yet we are reinforcing the brain to behave in a particular way because of the box we put it in. And then you've got young people who then become educators, and they replicate out box thinking again to another generation, who then replicate the box back into the brain of the next generation. So that's, I'm really fascinated with how we can break that circuit. And we were doing some work with Year 8s the other week, and we got them to collaborate and build little buildings together, and as individuals, and they had to design a little house, their own kind of version of utopia. And there was a couple of students that were building these circle houses amongst everybody else. And I said, wow, how'd you come up with that idea? I was trying to figure out who their parents were, or what house they actually lived in. And they really didn't quite get the question, but there was nothing that looked different to them when they were building these kind of things. Lots of square boxes and, town halls and square shapes and square kind of, community areas that looked very familiar, straight lines, straight vertical things. But there was about 4 or 5 kids in the room that had just built these circle things. And I said to them, where did you get that idea from? Why did you do that? And they're like, oh, I just saw it that way. I was like, right, interesting. And I was talking to the facilitator, and I said, do you find there's these patterns with students or schools? And she said, yeah, different schools I visit, different parts of Sydney, different kind of systemic schools or private and public schools. There is an output that clearly relates to the culture of the students that visit that place, that are enrolled there, and the landscapes and the spaces that these students study and spend so much of their time in. So I just find that fascinating. I'd love to do some more work on that one. And if there's anyone out there that's interested in doing, that's working in that field, I'd love to learn from them. But that's that's kind of the real exciting thing going forward, going all the way back to the beginning here, is how can we take this creativity and this wonderful disruption that's happening around us. And what about this beautiful nation that we've got, and in particular the First Nations wisdom that is right here, that is often calling out to collaborate with and really lead Australia into this new kind of industry or an economy, really deeply based in sustainability, obviously, but an opportunity to go out into this new world and say, right, these are some opportunities here. These are some pathways. It doesn't need to be, all flashy and fancy. We've got something really genuine and really deep. And how do we bring that knowledge and wisdom that's embedded in this beautiful place back into the consciousness of mainstream society? Because I feel all of the answers are right at our fingertips. We just need to be able to get that collaboration and see, what else is happening and who else is doing to be able to bring some of these ideas and energy together. So that's a little bit about me and about the world I inhabit and what I try and create, and always looking for ways to collaborate and build with others. So by all means, shout out. But if you've got any questions, shoot them along, and let's keep this creativity flowing, like those little water drops. The more connection, the bigger the river. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Richard. Look, we've got some time for questions. So I'm just struck by that work on ontology. I think that's kind of fascinating. I hadn't come across that before, and it's such an interesting kind of mind-boggling thing to get your head around. But so I've kind of got questions about what that means for our pedagogy in the arts. I don't know quite what my question is, but should we be mindful of that when we're kind of thinking about how we're teaching in the arts, particularly when we're thinking about design, or is it just a phenomena that sits outside that? And just before you answer that, if you do have a question, feel free just to put the hand icon up or put it in the chat, whatever you want to do. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, so let me try and get that question right. That you're saying, how mindful do we need to be of, do we need to explicitly say you're in a room, like to try and draw out that ontological impact of our students in education or just in life in general?
Well, I'm thinking about our students either in a tertiary setting or in a high school setting or wherever.
Look, I think the more you can explicitly state something, whether it be, I want you to feel uncomfortable when we're doing this, I want you to feel a little bit lost. If you're doing that, you're actually doing the right thing. So trying to make things as explicit as possible, especially if they're new, and what the outcome feeling needs to be, and really, wrap around that with positive affirmation. It's like, yes, this is great. You're on the right track here. It feels a little bit odd because it's something we've kind of forgotten to do. So if you're looking at that ontological piece, definitely how you set up your classrooms, how you have that seating arrangement, how you work carefully and kindly disrupting that paradigm, because we don't like being out of our comfort zones. We don't like our seating plan disrupted. But certainly, the short answer, make it as explicit as possible. Think about the room you're in. Think about how comfortable you are looking up at the ceiling and knowing there's those walls around you. Is there can you move away from that occasionally?
Great. Any other questions for Richard at this point? Oh, Penny, you have a real hand up. That threw me.
Oh, sorry. Can't see in one eye, so it's hard to see the other one. Richard, really inspiring. I think we've met as part of the Possibility Studies Network. Is that right? Where I met Michael. Have you been to those calls? Anyway,
No.
where have we met? I feel as though I know you, but no, that was so interesting. I'm sorry I joined late. I had a separate meeting with Michael at 9 a.m. my time here, so he asked me to jump on, but no, so fascinating. And I think there's so much synergy with your work, Michael's work, our work together. And obviously, you know, your centre, Michael. I'm also particularly interested in the relationship between, well, not just humans and the environment, but also the more than human or the many more than human worlds. And I like your framing around kind of indigenous wisdom. I was mentioning to Michael earlier that my dear friend David Roussel is at Melbourne RMIT and working on the concept of kind of climate child imaginaries in post-human research spaces, and our project in the UK, which is called Forest of Imagination, which is very much around the kind of living classroom, the idea of, well, going back to Joseph Beuys's phrase around every classroom should be a work of art. So the pedagogy is then public and shared, and you know, it's about, I suppose, in that sense, it's about kind of what Andrew Brereton calls making learning, making ourselves. So it links to your kind of ontological view. But I suppose my question is too broad for now, but it's maybe a start to think that, you know, we're also in the UK rethinking our approach to education. And we have a current curriculum assessment review, which sadly is too evolutionary, not revolutionary. Mike and I were talking about that earlier. And also, you know, in terms of the kind of systemic change, how you show and make visible what's possible through engaging different communities, but also, you know, whether it's our students at the university or the local cultural creative community, you know, the intergenerational community, that idea that we all have a response ability for this. So I suppose my question is, you know, what are you trying to do in the first instance to change people's minds about the way our young people learn?
What am I saying, what am I doing with the students, or what am I doing with the broader education community about shifting some of this?
Yeah, the latter really. I suppose what doing something every day to make a difference, but what's happening in Australia to change the system?
Design pedagogy is big. Design and technology, similar issues that the UK is facing with teacher, decline, and how we're grappling with that increased population, decreasing teachers coming into the space. But a lot of good energy happening in the design world, and industry working with educators really closely, especially secondary. So that's a big driver of mine as well, to try and get as close to industry as possible, and have that as your textbook, to be listening to what they need, what their jobs, how their jobs are evolving, and making sure students and parents are hearing that. So trying to short circuit away from government policies and initiatives, to actually just going straight to what does this look like for this young person's next step in their career journey, and where do they want to go, and let's see how close you can get those two things. So not too worried about curriculum reform and anything like that. It's more, let's talk to the people who are on the next step of this young person's journey, and let's get them into the classroom and have those conversations. Don't worry about policy shifts or syllabus upgrades or anything like that. A lot of that's happening here in Australia, a lot of reform, but it'll always come back to young people and parents having that conversation around the dinner table, saying, okay, this is what I love doing, can I do this? And the mums and dads saying, no, we just don't think that's a viable option for you, stick with what you know. So how do you just jump over those, the policy and the paper, to go, no, you know what, I've seen Claire, she just got a part-time job with this ad agency because she put in this really cool application. She's only 16. Can I do that and study at the same time and stay at school? Yeah, sure. They were happy to do that. So it's all about, if you can show these success stories, I just find that cuts through all of any of the written word anywhere.
Yeah, sounds we're on the same page. Thank you.
Well, I reckon, Michael, I'm going to have to give you a challenge on the paperclip next time I'm over your way.
So
There
I was going to say, yes, I feel like I've created a whole genre of paperclip mouse kind of world. So I'm pretty excited by that. I'll go and see if I can make that into a very, very profitable children's series. So thanks so much for your time and your application to this area, not just tonight, but being such an advocate in this area and leading a lot of the work as well. And I note that you've dropped your email in the chat, which is very generous. So if people want to continue this discussion, they know where to get you. But thanks for your time tonight and giving us insights into all your wisdom. Or just Google Create Centre, University of Sydney, become a member, and all that'll come to you, and look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Thanks very much, everyone. Night.
Thanks for inviting me. See you again.
See you. Bye.
Ciao, everybody.